So as Chris said, I'm Mike Mora. I am from the company called KnowledgeLake. We are a managed ISV out of St. Louis, Missouri. I'm happy to be here. Thank Chris and Ignition for getting us down here to get in front of you guys. First time in Bermuda? It's my first time. This is the first time I've ever been here. I've never been to any of the islands here in the area at all, and it's just amazing to come out here and see this. This is a beautiful area you guys have got. I'm really happy I got the chance to get down here. So it's great, and I appreciate the time that you guys took to come out here and everything. So what we have kind of constructed for you, as George did earlier, was the kind of the direction Microsoft's going. And we're going to finish off the day talking about how foundational ECM and in its core is going to help you with your SharePoint deployments and how you can utilize that internally into your organizations. Because the bottom line comes down to how is this going to be useful for me and for my organization. How many people in the room are currently using some version of SharePoint? It's good. It's good. It's good. How many people have actually deployed SharePoint 2013 yet? Awesome. Awesome. Are you guys primarily, let's see, show of hands, SharePoint 2010? Good. 2007? How many people are doing 2003 still? Ooh, okay, good. So KnowledgeLake's been around for quite a while, and Mike's going to give a much bigger background of this, but we were actually, I say this all the time, we were doing SharePoint before SharePoint was cool, right? We started out doing SharePoint and hitched our wagon to that, or hitched our horse to that wagon a long time ago, back in 2004. And we've been through all the scars and iterations associated with it. So when I came on board at KnowledgeLake back in 2006, we were still using 2003 as our platform that we were doing things. It was very isolated and very specific, and I got to see that iteration to go from 03 to 07. It was an exciting time for me. I, by nature, refer to myself as just an amateur musician. Basically, that's what I do for my fun and enjoyment. And the late 70s, when I started growing up, I got into technology. It's all the foot pedals and the amplifiers I thought were just the coolest thing in the world. And that kind of led me down the path of where we're at today. Because I'm just, at heart, really just a geek. And I get excited about things that I think are really useful tools. I'm still upset with popular science because I don't have my flying car yet. You know, those kind of things that were promised me by the year 2000 I was hoping to see and come into fruition, and they just haven't gotten there yet. So, but I do find a lot of functions that we find in software to be exciting for us as a business, as consumers of information and consumers of stuff. So there's a lot of things that George touched upon, and I thank George for coming out once again and doing the presentation that he did. I'm going to go over some of the functional things that SharePoint 2013 is going to do to help you as a business, right? And I'm going to try to highlight some areas that you can take advantages of SharePoint 2013 in that aspect. And also, you know, we're going to lead into the concept of what are some of the things that KnowledgeLake as well as Ignition can aid you in getting that adoption going on. So, without further ado, let's jump into this. So, George touched upon some very basic things. He touched upon the share, organize, discover, build, and manage, okay? I'm not going to hit on anything that talks about build. I'm not going to hit on anything that talks about manage. Because I think from an organizational standpoint, it's very important to understand that I don't want to have to use and build things to get my stuff going. You don't have to do that with SharePoint 2013. That is an extension of what you can do with 2013, but let's face facts. I need stuff, excuse me, I need things for today for my business. So, we're going to look at, and I'm not going to talk about manage because everybody talks about mitigating risks and taking care of costs, and you know, there's a lot of different ways you can skin that cat. But the bottom line is that SharePoint does help you in any of those aspects, whether it be 2013, even 2010, and even to a certain extent 2007. So we're going to talk primarily about share, organize, and discover topics inside of this before we get into where I hand it off to my colleague, Mike Beltman here, to talk about some ECM stuff. Now, when we talk about share, we have to realize that the world has changed. George hit upon this earlier about the number of Facebook users, how Twitter's being used. When I came to work at KnowledgeLake, I thought it was interesting. I was introduced to people that, colleagues of mine, that were so young, they were as young as my children. And these guys had never known life, as I said it, without SportsCenter. So they never knew highlights without watching the whole game. I think the same is true in today's world when we start to talk about end users coming into our environments. Right? If we hire people, the people that we hire today, the young and up-and-coming people, have never had life without Facebook. They've never had life without Twitter. They don't understand what it is to have a smartphone. My 4-year-old nephew came over to my house a while back, and I was playing on my DVD player, I was playing a CD of some Christmas music. And he walked up to the TV, and he took his hand in front of the TV and started swiping the TV. He's like, what's going on? I don't understand what's going on. He's sitting there, and that's how he interacts with devices. He's growing up in a world in which he doesn't understand the concept of not swiping or being able to use touch on any device that he is. My niece came to me and said, how come we can't listen to this song on the radio right now? Because I don't have that song on a CD. She did not have a concept of physical media. She didn't understand that concept. So the world is changing. I mean, it's getting there quick, and we need to be prepared for it. So let's talk a little bit about sharing. Sharing in this concept of SharePoint, as we talk about it, is how we're going to do the next level of interaction inside of SharePoint. There are going to be new functionalities associated to how SharePoint 2013 delivers information to individuals inside of your organization. Let's go to them in the way they consume data. So, for example, you'll get discussion groups throughout all of SharePoint 2013, the ability to kind of interact with documents, interact with each other, and be able to see how other people answer information. These things are going to be exposed inside of our search with SharePoint 2013. They've taken huge inroads to make it ubiquitous across the entire enterprise. Let's see if we can use our mouse here. So one of the things that we notice is that in SharePoint 2013, it's vital for us to be able to find the information that we're looking for very quickly. Today, you need information, you go to Bing. You may go to Google, but people around here should go to Bing. So there you go. So they go to search for information wherever they're at. If they have a question, that's the first thing. I mean, there's a site out on the internet right now that says, let me Google that for you. And you literally type something in because somebody asks you a question. That's your expectation. Your expectation is they've taken that first step to look it up. I'm an old guy. I'm reaching into my 50s now, and I remember growing up as a kid, I would ask my parents a question. And they'd look at me and they'd go, we bought an entire set of encyclopedias from that guy that showed up here at the door the other day. Go look it up, right? Go look that information up before you come and ask me that question. Go find out that information yourself. Well, my children grew up in a world where they have the opportunity to do that themselves, only it's not in a book. It's on the internet. And we want to be able to provide through Microsoft, or excuse me, through SharePoint, the ability to do exactly the same thing. Whether you're searching for people, somebody inside of your organization, whether you're searching for something they talked about, a thread, a blog, a threaded discussion group that they generated, all of those things are vital to you gaining information, especially in today's world. I mean, okay, 1985, this wonderful device called the fax machine came out, right? This wonderful, amazing thing called the fax machine came out. It's got this mojo. It can deliver a piece of paper in like 12 minutes over across the phone line, you know. It was crazy, right? And I remember in 1985 starting out in my career working and people saying, this is going to save us so much time. We are absolutely going to be spending all of our time on the golf course. That's all we're going to do. It's going to be awesome. We have this fax machine. This is an amazing thing, right? Well, the bottom line is, fast forward 5 years after that, and what are we doing? We're faxing our order into the Chinese restaurant so we can pick it up and get back to work right away. You know, that kind of things is what really technology has brought us. George talked about the SkyDrive, and it's another thing we'll talk about. A wonderful thing about being able to take your work that you're working on, throw it into your SkyDrive, and pick it up at home. Not exactly what I want to be doing, but that is a technology that does exist. People need to have that in certain aspects. So they're always looking for ways to put social to work, making it useful inside of your organization, because the fact of the matter is the people you hired today already use social. This is a way to get them to adopt what you're currently using, and a way to conform them into your organization and bring to that the capabilities. So the new social layout has this, to its credit, has this thing called a news feed. The news feed inside of SharePoint 2013 provides me, just like you would inside of Twitter, inside of Yammer, inside of Facebook, you get to follow the people that you choose to follow and find out what they're talking about. This is going to be pushed out even further than just to SharePoint itself, but in the same way people interact these days. We're talking about on Windows devices, on iOS devices, soon to be Android devices. That always lags behind, doesn't it? It's always the last one to get any attention. So you've got the Windows devices, so you can get your news feed. You'll get alerts just like you would for your Facebook feed, for your Twitter feed. It'll manage @ mentions. So for example, if I say, hey, @ Chris Eaton has a great deal going on at Ignition, he would be able to see inside of his feed that I had mentioned him in a piece of information that I put onto SharePoint 2013. So staying connected, being able to use your social and make it work for you inside your organization is going to become a vital part of how you're going to be doing business going forward. There really isn't anything going back anymore. We can't just constrain people because they're going to go find other places to work. They want to work the way they work. Okay, let's talk about, oops, sorry about that, sharing content. So now you've got them, right? You've got them in the aspect that they're actually able to do threaded discussion groups. You're working on this user adoption piece of SharePoint, which has always been the biggest problem. I have been involved with SharePoint since very, very early on. And one of the key pieces that is an impedance to organizations being able to utilize this technology is user adoption. It's always been, at best, okay, right? You really have to find a compelling reason for them to use it. What was great about our tool set from KnowledgeLake, by the way, our tool set is an ECM tool that provides functionality inside of SharePoint that allows you to capture and manage documents and be able to perform workflows and work with line of business applications. When we came to IT groups, how many people are here in IT? Okay, so when we come to IT groups, back in 2007, they really, really wanted to have SharePoint utilized across the enterprise. They saw the value of it very early. They're technologists. They're like me. They're geeks. They know. They see the value, right? We brought a really, really compelling business reason to start using SharePoint 2007. And that has continued on through the path. Once again, user adoption is the key. If SharePoint 2013 now is moving towards the concept of social and being able to manage social content, now let's see if we can get them to go through documents, sharing actual content. Documents, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, videos, those kind of things, right? And so what we see is new streamlined, oops, jumped ahead there. I'm missing a slide. Oh well, we'll get on. So the concept here is I can actually share documents inside of a library and actually control where they're going to be seen. And in addition to that, I can even see previews of that information right away. Very quick thumbnails of data that's there available to end users to interact. Now, when we go into the search piece of this, you'll see even more functionality associated with that. Who shared what, when was this shared, all those kind of times. One of the functions that I really, really am excited about with SharePoint 2013 is something that has been drastically missing. As an end user, as a user of technology, you have documents on your computer. What do you do when you want to move that document? You grab it, drag it, and put it where you want it. Doesn't matter where you want to go, that's what you want to do. Whether it be in an email, I want to drag it, I want to put it in my email. Very simple functionality. Drag and drop capabilities has now been added to SharePoint 2013. So I can have the document library open on screen A, and my Windows Explorer on screen B. I can drag it, drop it into my document library. Huge functionality that's been addressed by Microsoft that was missing in the early versions of Microsoft. From right in here, I can actually choose to edit that document if I have the rights to edit that document. I can go in right in there and start manipulating that Word document. I can see the previews. I can actually track who's been dealing with this. So notice in here, it says who was this shared with. So I can specify exactly who that was going to be shared with, who that's going to be involved with. Another piece of the puzzle that George hit upon is the concept of syncing up what you have. So here I can share items in SharePoint and then sync them up with my SkyDrive Pro. So here I have a document library that I've created that has all of this information that I've been working on. I've been doing that from my desktop at the office, right? But now I've got to go on the road. I've got to come to Bermuda. I saw a saying the other day that I just fell in love with from Mark Twain. And it says, while you may go to heaven, I will go to Bermuda. I love that saying. So you know, the idea here is that I can actually synchronize all the things that I have inside of my SharePoint by simply clicking a button, and it goes up to my SkyDrive Pro. Now I'm on the road, I've got my Surface. I'm not at my desk, I've got my Surface. My information that I had out on that SharePoint drive is available to me right there on SkyDrive Pro. This is a great capability, especially for road warriors like myself and Mike and George, be able to take what we have online at our office and be able to manage it even while we're on the road. So SkyDrive Pro, and there's a couple of iterations of SkyDrive Pro. There's SkyDrive, SkyDrive Pro, then there's SharePoint, and a couple of those things. We'll talk about those a little later. There's different iterations of that. But it's, you know, involved with Office 365, it's involved with SharePoint 2013, your My Sites, Windows 8, your Office 2013. I'm using it with my preview here. So there's a lot of functionality that's all about trying to help users become more accessible to their data. Step one, we got them hooked by, we got threaded discussion groups, we make it Facebook-like, we make it Twitter-like, right? We've got some user adoption that people are already using. Step two, we make it easier for them to get to their content. So long as we make it easier for them to get to content, they'll use the content. Talking about creating efficiencies inside your organizations, no more excuses. Okay, so another piece of this puzzle is being able to communicate exactly what you're talking about, what you want to happen inside of your organization. This is the vision portion that George mentioned before. Well, the vision portion is very important, but what it does is it makes it just so much easier for you to communicate that. How does it make it easier by that? Well, now you can actually utilize PowerPoint in a drag and drop environment to show news feeds and headlines. So I create a PowerPoint slide, I could throw it into the middle of a SharePoint environment just to communicate to my team that what I'm looking at. All right? Everybody knows how to use PowerPoint. I mean, it's amazing how much PowerPoint's out there. I remember talking to Scott McNeely from Sun Microsystems, CEO of Sun Microsystems. He banned PowerPoint inside of his organization. There's Sun Microsystems, that's not surprising. Because it was taking up so much space inside of his network because so many PowerPoint decks. But there is probably no better way to communicate information to a broad audience than PowerPoint. One of the best tools that Microsoft's ever made. Taking that, leveraging that tool inside of SharePoint is a natural transition for Microsoft to do that. So for example, this whole headline here area, that's just a PowerPoint slide with clickable links, as a matter of fact, inside of it. And you just drag and drop that in there, boom, you're ready to go. With making authoring much easier inside of SharePoint. How many people have tried to customize their SharePoint site? Do you have a coding degree to do that? It's not an easy thing. I mean, you know, you can go and edit the page, you can go change the web parts around. There's some very basic things you can do, but when you start to break down into what, you know, I want to get some serious interaction associated with that page, I have to pull in a team like Ignition to do something like that. I have to pull in, you know, some serious coders to be able to handle that. That's some great stuff. They're making it easier, and we're going to see a lot of value out of this. Now, what's cool about this as well is we've got some new iterative items on the menu there that we can utilize. You know, being able to extend our reach with news and events and different things that we're trying to communicate to our teams, blogs, inline site information, things like that. All right, so far, we've been able to rope people in for user adoption using threaded discussion groups, the way they work. We've made it easier for them to manage their own existing content using SharePoint and SkyDrive Pro. We've actually got to the ability to be able to reach out to them using dynamic sites to share our vision with the individuals inside of organizations. Building teams is the next step. So a great thing about SharePoint 2013 is it leverages your Active Directory environment so that you can use the user profiles to organize teams inside of your organization. And that means you can organize teams departmentally, cross-functionally, by project, things like that. You can create these teams and team sites in which things can be shared. SharePoint 2013 tends to make things a whole lot easier than it was in 2010 when it comes to creating and sharing information. Huge, tight integration with OneNote. How many people use OneNote? Oh, really? Wow, we use OneNote like crazy. Are you guys Evernote fans? Is that what it is? We need to do a OneNote session. I'm sorry, I'm a geek about technology. I love OneNote. So the ability to share notebooks across. So for example, OneNote's a tool set that allows me to take real quick notes down and dirty. I can take images, drop them in there, put URLs and stuff in there, just so I can, you know, it's a notepad for me. And what's great is that Mike Beltman and I are in the same organization. We're on the same team. I can actually share my notebook with him in SharePoint 2013. He can view my notebook and then edit my notebook and make notes of his own, especially if we're working on the same organization. So he may have conversations with Chris about some things, about an event we're doing. He puts it in his notebook. It gets updated to SharePoint 2013. I instantly get that information available to me in my notebook. Very, very cool ability to share across teams. Also, we have the option to put information about ourselves inside of our user profile. So we can create cross-functional teams without actually meeting people if you're an organization that big. You can start adding people as you go along. All right, so some of the things that I'd like to highlight here is that, you know, you've got a way of creating your own site. You can capture meeting notes in your OneNote notebooks. You can get all that data, and it's all a team site. This is outside of your standard Active Directory organizational units, right? So if I have a departmental group that I have an organizational unit, I report to Chris, Chris reports to George, and so on and so forth, right? I can actually create a cross-functional team of people and assign them to a team site. They can work on projects or things like that inside of that team site, but still maintain their organizational unit allegiance. They keep up in sync. One of the great things is they always will be able to see their documents, notebooks, everything they need to know about what's going on with that team. Sharing calendars, that's a big thing in our organization because we're constantly on the road. Who's available where and who's available when. So sharing calendars is a big deal. Also, we can create workflows inside of these. Workflows allows us to create simplified tasks for end users, something I can easily check off. SharePoint, or excuse me, Microsoft has made an enormous inroads into cross-functionally keeping project server, SharePoint tasks, and Outlook tasks all in a single feed. And I can update all of that information in a single location. So now I can have a work list of things to do when I go into the office, pull up my task list, and actually be able to check things off as I go along. I don't know about you guys, but I love creating a list and saying, I did that, and I did that. That way I can go home and not worry about whether or not I have to pull something from my SkyDrive Pro. So let's talk a little bit about how these tasks are created and what we do as far as sharing them. I can identify, you know, people that I want to share with, whether it be in the organization or outside of the organization. I can share via email depending on your identification. We can require sign-ins, things like that that are available. So when they come in to look at that data, they can actually go in and identify who they are. We can keep a complete audit trail. When we say manage permissions, it's not just who can see it, but who can edit the document, who can work the document as you go forward and work that work item in there. So We've got the concept of getting people the way they use work already. Threaded discussion groups, Twitter feeds, Facebook look and feel, right? We've been able to take their content and organize their content in a way in which they're going to be able to manage it not only locally, but also on the road, in SkyDrive Pro, in SharePoint 2013. We looked at how we could share our vision of what was going on inside of our organization, whether it be by team, or whether it be by organization, or whether it be by company. And finally, we got to a point where we were going to create and organize teams inside of that organization, cross-functionally and departmentally, to be able to manage that. And last but not least, in this organization piece, you think about projects. Things you do every day at work are generally kicked off by some sort of project. You know, we have an event that we need to do. That's going to require a project. We have a rollout we need to do inside of our organization. That requires some kind of project. We have an upgrade we need to do. That's some sort of project. All of those things lead to basically tasks, people, and time. And we want to find better ways as organizations, as employers, as companies, to manage that, tasks, employees, and time. SharePoint 2013 has added some functionality that was available in Project Server that allows me to aggregate all of my Project Server. People are familiar, anybody familiar with Project Server? One. What about Microsoft Project? Anybody know Microsoft Project? How many people love Microsoft Project? I'm a lover of Microsoft Project. Because I can make a Gantt chart this big and go, see boss, this is what I'm doing. I don't have to check anything off. I just show him the Gantt chart and I'm good to go, right? He's like, you got a plan. Okay, that's good, right? So that's the thing, is that we have this huge Gantt chart of information that we try to achieve while we're there, right? We're planning our stuff. We're really good about that. I'm really good about planning. I'm also really good about planning to do things like dieting, which doesn't really work too well. Cutting down my drinking, that doesn't work too well. But you know, those kind of things. I plan really well, but I don't achieve those goals because I don't have anything constantly giving me an accountability for that. One of the things that SharePoint 2013 provides to us is the ability to aggregate all of those tasks, whether it be in Project, using Project Server, whether it be in Outlook, because we can create tasks in Outlook, right? We can all, you know, and that'll keep coming up and it'll keep reminding us and nagging us, and we'll remind me later, remind me later. And then we have SharePoint tasks, automated tasks that happen in workflow. So I need to approve something, I need to review something, any of that sort of items, right? With my new newsfeed inside of SharePoint 2013, I'm going to have all of my tasks in one location, whether it comes from Outlook, Project Server, or through SharePoint. So now I've got a workflow inbox available to me to utilize. So I'm going to not only share my tasks myself, but I can also share them with my teammates. I can share them with my boss. I can manage this and edit them inline from and update Project Server, update Outlook from anywhere inside of that same SharePoint view that I have right there. So now I'm using SharePoint to get user adoption, sharing content or managing content that I have created for my organization. I've now added, I've seen the vision, I've been added to a team, and now I'm getting to-do lists, not just from SharePoint, but also from Outlook, as well as from Project Server. And I have an inbox that allows me to manage all of that right there. I can roll these up, I can roll up calendars, I can roll all these things up as a manager. As IT people, you're going to be talking to your business unit managers. This is the tool set that they can use to manage their people very simply. There are a lot of companies out there making money on managing time. And SharePoint makes it really easy for you to do all of that. So you push the task down to the individual, and they're able to account for those tasks. Okay, so now we've got an organization that's bought in. That's the user adoption piece. That's a big deal. Trying to understand how and why this is important to me as a everyday full-time employee worker, right? I come into the office, I get my $2 in pizza a day, and I'm able to do what I do. That's what I pay scanners, so just like you know. So, all right, next thing you know is I've got all these people in SharePoint, all these people in Active Directory. I've got all these things being interacted on inside of SharePoint, all these things being interacted on inside of my content. So I need to find out about that content. SharePoint has made some pretty big advances in 2013 for search, for discovering information. Talk a little bit about them. So for example here, the new search item will show you some very different looks and feels. You've got this bar up here at the top that talks about I can look for everything. I can look for video, people, videos, conversations, reports. Have you guys ever seen this before? You go to Bing. You type in something to Bing, you can search for images, you can search for videos, you can search the web. Similar concept, but now it's conducive to the way people work inside of SharePoint. Another new advance is this preview. For Office documents, I can get a quick preview of all the things that are inside of that document. Take a look and read inside of there and find out what it is. I get some recommendations. These are things that we didn't have before inside of SharePoint. Is recommendations based upon my search query. You were looking for this, maybe you mean this. We see that in some other search engines that we have. We can actually see some history of things I've already searched. How many times have you gone and searched for something in SharePoint and go, how did I find that before? Or find that in Bing and how did I find that before? All those questions are always there. The other piece is that we still have the resource type. So whatever types of files those are, you can focus in on those. So are they PDFs? Are they Word documents? Are they PowerPoints? And a new piece of the puzzle is modified by. Very easy to use scalar, so I can see what's more recent, what's not more recent. I can move it together, collapse it, and show exactly, get down to when this item was uploaded or modified. Another piece, how many people use YouTube now for technical training? Yep. Anytime I need something to find out how to do something, I go to YouTube right away. Let me see. Is there a video on how to configure manage properties for every crawl property discovered? Oops, I'm sorry, I talked geek. Yeah, there's a video for that. There's a video for everything these days. You want to learn how to tie your shoes the right way? There's a TED Talk about that. So all of those things are now obviously, you know, across the enterprise. There are different things that we're using internally to our enterprise. Often we'll find videos that we're having inside of our organization. I need to see the video that we did at the Ignition event in Bermuda at the end of January. I can get that information. But some of the things that's been included that was not available previously in SharePoint were some very, very specific things around the video content type. So like, for example, length of video, codec, you know, some basic stuff around that, similar to what we have with the document content type. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it is a definite help. So in this case, you'll see a duration list, you'll see a YouTube-like display of all those items, plus you can actually see a preview of the videos depending on the video type. Video thumbnails, you can preview it right there, and you have graphical refiners for that content. Now, one of the things that we have are power users that like to go in and deep dive data. If I'm already putting data in SharePoint, statistical data, task data, work data, things like that, I can utilize things like Excel and Power View to create these very, very intelligent dashboards through BI. And you can surface those inside of SharePoint and make them available for and share them with your other users inside of your organization. This is a little deeper dive into some of the things that we'll see. Once again, this is something you'd want to engage an SI for, to kind of help you create these cubes to look at the business intelligence inside of your organization and really kind of give that return on the investment of what you're doing for there and that total cost of ownership. All right. Connections. Connections is an interesting thing. I don't know how many organizations here are as big enough that they require a way to kind of find out who's working in the organization. I know a lot of you have organizations here, and then you're dislocated from another piece of your organization. So this is a office of many, and in that case, this discovering connections is a really big piece. Understanding who's inside your organization. We were at Flanagan's last night, or night before last, and it seemed like everybody knew everybody, so I didn't think that was a problem here on this island. But I know that you have a national organization in the States. We'll have people on one coast and on the other coast, and they don't know anything about each other. And so discovering connections is a really big deal, whether it be people or whether it be things that people are talking about. Let's talk a little bit about how inside we can build communities that will actually tap into the information associated with what they're discussing. I can categorize it, I can see who's actually done replies to it, popularity, top contributors, things like that. These are things that you would find on a normal blogging environment, right? If you go out to MSDN, you'll find SharePoint MVPs. SharePoint MVPs are guys that are answering questions about SharePoint regularly, and by the community are voted as an MVP. Similarly is to having, I've had more contributions to this environment. Inside of your own organization, you can find experts. We're not big enough to have that situation at KnowledgeLake. We're about 150, 160 people. And we know right away that there are some pretty top intelligent people, big brains in our organization. We've got a couple of SharePoint certified masters, and we've got a lot of people that are SharePoint MVPs. Inside of organizations, so we can go directly to those. But in an organization, our parent company, Fujitsu, it's a pretty difficult thing to find out who's all in the 8,000 employees of that company. Using SharePoint helps us leverage that information. So this really helps you find what you're looking for. It helps you by identifying inside of your search and being able to actually look at the tags and the authors associated with that. This is, once again, pulling all back to the ability to get to the content that was developed inside of there. Some of the things that I'd like to highlight here is this concept of search based on conversations, and you can find out what the actions were by simply mousing over there and see what the replies were. Quick, instantaneous, once again, instant gratification, because that's the kind of society we live in right now, right? I want instant gratification for what I'm looking for and finding that immediately. Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about organization of information. And when I think about organization or organizing information, I immediately go to my ECM wheels, right? Things that are very important to an organization. Foundational ECM, Enterprise Content Management. I could ask everybody in this room what Enterprise Content Management is, and I guarantee you I'd get about 40 different answers. I call it the ever-changing meaning. It always changes. I've got a list of about 400 different meanings of the acronym ECM that I've asked for people throughout the time that I've been doing presentations. It's pretty funny. But foundationally, or basically, ECM is defined into 4 different categories. Forrester Group defines it that way. AIM defines it that way. We've got foundational, you've got business, transactional, and persuasive. Right? The foundational are things that you have to have in order to even call it an ECM system. Some of those things include search, authoring, taxonomy. Ever heard the word taxonomy? How things are laid out, how the metadata is going to describe the documents you have inside of your systems. Workflow, records management. These are things that SharePoint does really well. That foundationally, SharePoint has that capability. We extend that through our software to make it more robust and more business-centric for your end users. Then you go out to the business area, and you're talking about collaboration, portals, some document management, those kind of things that are important to organizations and how they're dealing with it. But I always rest upon transactional pieces. Transactional content management is about any paper goes back and forth between organizations that deals with money, invoices, applications for employment, resumes. All of those things deal with money in some way, shape, or form and can affect your business and how they do things. So Important things to remember about transactional content management is things like how I get data in there, capture, scanning, those kind of things. Business process modeling. Those are big pieces of transactional content, how I'm going to model my process. Then lastly, there's the persuasive piece, which is all the really sexy stuff like web content management and multi-channel distribution. I know my idea of sexy might be different than your guys's, but those are the foundational pieces of ECM. What SharePoint 2013 has done is taken what we discovered at KnowledgeLake as a need inside of it and kind of fleshed it through, made it more robust to allow for better records management, being able to put things on hold, being able to report better and find information much quicker. The ease of putting data into SharePoint has increased the adoption and thereby increased the ability to do true enterprise content management. So nail it down. I'm just about through here. Let's talk about some of the highlights of what we talked about. We've got enterprise social experiences. We're talking about how consumers of data currently consume that data. How do they use it? How do they put it out there in the internet, in the stratosphere, in the SharePoint environments, and adopting to that aspect. Finding that information, threaded discussion groups, those kind of things. We talked about document collaboration, using SharePoint, SkyDrive Pro, being able to share documents across teams, outside of my organizational units, outside of my organization even. We talked about, project management. This is the concept of delivering tasks to the end user, giving them a list of tasks that they can do. As a business unit manager, as a project manager, these are things that you can create organizational teams in and cross-functional teams and then assign tasks to them, whether it be through Outlook, Project Server, SharePoint tasks, workflow tasks, any of those, and bubble them up inside of their task list. Lastly was the search. Search is a big deal because you got to find what you put it into. You can put things in a shoebox, but if you can't find it later, it's not really a good shoebox. And that's really where SharePoint has always excelled in having a great search engine. We're going to get into how we extend that search engine with the KnowledgeLake tool suite. And my colleague Mike Beltman comes up and talks to you a little more about SharePoint 2013, foundational ECM, and the KnowledgeLake tool set. But that, in a nutshell, is what I'm excited about with SharePoint 2013. I've not had a chance to get this excited about a product in about 3 or 4 years, so it's kind of fun for me. And I hope you guys get a chance to really get interacted with what SharePoint 2013 offers to you as an organization, as a company, and it helps meet all the goals that you're trying to reach this year. Thanks.